Okay, Board of Education, we've got a number of candidates who are throwing their hat into the ring, including Dr. Jerry Alexandratos, who is running for your vote on May 14th. Dr. Alexandratos, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Well, first, I guess I'd like to start off by just asking you why now? What kind of instigated your decision to run for Board of Education?
Well, from a personal perspective, I've been a research scientist for about 30 years. I'm about to retire, but I want to continue giving back to my community. From a school perspective, there have been several issues going on in the school system to which I feel I can contribute. Um, we've got the problem of some schools being underperforming, which I think is not entirely the fault of the students or the teachers, but there's a systemic issue in terms of inadequate resources that needs to be addressed. Um, that's the big thing, I
Yeah,
would say.
yeah, look, absolutely understand. And I guess the first question that pops into my head is, what, and I guess I can ask it this way. If you were elected, what are the three main things that you feel need to be addressed immediately with FCPS?
Oh gosh, top three. Well, the main one that I've touched on is school performance, but really it's school system performance that I think we need to talk about. Um, we are not able to attract and retain enough highly qualified teachers. Um, Another issue is that we need more special education teachers in the system, and we haven't been able to get and keep enough of those. Certainly not enough to help all of the students that need help. And then the third major issue, which is also systemic, and I'm not sure it's going to be easy. Well, it's certainly not going to be easy to fix, but it's going to be a long-term fix. Is the issue that we've got so many old school buildings that need to be replaced, and that's going to be a fix that we need to partner with the state and the federal government in order to get enough funds, because that's a huge expense that we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I know the last school build, I think Frederick High was a hundred and some $1 million. I think it started originally at a $60 million budget, and you know how those things go. So I
Oh yeah.
guess my next question for all of this, and certainly where the teachers and special education educators are concerned, how do we pay for it? Right now, there's a between 25 and 30 million or so shortfall right now in the budget.
Hmm.
It is a huge issue to have good teachers going to other counties, but wages and benefits are the hugest expense pretty much of the of the budget. So how do you
Right.
fix that so that the teachers salaries aren't the first things that cut, or you know how do you do that with the budget that we have?
Well, there's two things. One, you need people on the Board of Education who value education, who put the education first, um, and want to focus the funds there on the teachers, on the students, on the school supplies, um, which is something that I'm very keen on. The other thing is the county executive had suggested raising taxes, which is always an issue that people hate to hear. Um, but unfortunately, over the last, say, 30 or 40 years, taxes has become a bad word in our society. And people have lost sight of the fact that with taxes, you purchase things that the entire society needs. And there's no other source of income when you get right down to it for public schools except for taxation. And it's possible I've lost a lot of voters just by being honest on that, but it's true.
Yeah.
What else can you do except either fund it properly or admit that you really just don't care about education and want a nickel and dime it? And that's
Yeah.
just not the way. It can't work that way.
So, and I don't know. I have not looked through the FCPS budget in many years, actually. I think some of us out here would think, oh, are there other places that cuts can happen that don't directly impact the teachers or students or
Hmm.
schools? You know what I mean? Is there any, are we top heavy in the budget, or do you feel like, look, we're running lean and sleek, and really the only way to do what we need to do is to get more revenue, which has to come from the taxpayer?
Well, I mean, I think the school system has been cutting where it needed to, where it could. And yes, there's always a possibility of looking at that. But as you said, the teacher salaries are by far one of the larger expenditures in the budget. And you're not going to get a significant increase in the teacher salaries and a boost in the number of teachers and a boost in the number of special education teachers, all out of cutting the fat. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there may be some things that you can fix, but over the years, it just has seemed to be, to me, looking in from the outside, uh, that we've been talking about cutting the fat for way longer than there could be any possibility of there being any more to cut.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. So, kind of along that line, obviously, right now there is a shortage of special education educators and teachers. What do you propose as an immediate solution, and then kind of a long term plan to kind of refill that well?
I don't know that there is an immediate solution without our county becoming a lot more competitive in terms of being able to hire teachers. I mean, it's a valid point that there is somewhat of a teacher shortage and we need to train more, but that is, as you say, a long-term solution, not a short-term one. And in order to attract more teachers to our county, we need to not be the lowest paying county in our area or one of the lowest. It's the same people who denigrate teachers and claim that teachers are overpaid are the same ones who say, oh, but the CEOs deserve every $1 million they get. Uh, I'm sorry, that's irrational.
Yeah, yeah. One of the points of parents' concerns, and you touched on this a little bit, is the overcrowding of schools,
Hmm.
the condition of schools,
Yeah.
obviously. So, kind of between the overcrowding and the new construction, what do you see as a plan that FCPS would need to implement in order to kind of relieve some of those issues?
Mm. In the short term, we're kind of stuck. I mean, you can't just build a new building and not have it impact the rest of the budget. You can't uh, immediately hire people. We're going to be in a situation of overcrowding and uh, have a teacher shortage for several years. Um, so, unless your definition of short term is different than mine, I don't know that there is a short term fix. Um, we need to fix the current problem. It's going to take time. And we need to develop a plan so that we're not stuck in this kind of problem again in the longer term.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a fair point. It's just, I'm sure, hard for parents who have kids maybe in third or fourth grade right now to hear that they're going to have to live with the way things are if they're not in a great state. So,
Well, I'm sorry, but I believe in telling the truth to people. I'm
sure.
not going to lie to folks to get elected and then shrug my shoulders and say there was nothing I could do.
Yeah.
Um,
No, it's a fair point,
this,
and it's appropriate response. I'm just saying it's tough when you're in it to see the forest for
oh
the
yeah,
trees or whatever that saying is. But yeah,
oh yeah.
I 100% I understand. So you've never taught in the school. You've been a student for a while
Hmm.
of the education system.
Right.
Would you? I know some parents asked if for people that had not been educators, would you be willing to go into the schools as a substitute or experience, or have you experienced even a day in the life of a teacher?
My wife is a retired public school teacher.
Ah,
I've
okay. So
I've
you've lived
been
it vicarious.
I've lived it vicariously. I've also gone into her school to volunteer to help take care of her classroom, repair things, helped her with school materials. Uh, I've gone in with my toolkit and fixed things because the repair people were overworked.
Yeah, yeah,
And in
fair enough.
addition, I have lectured. I've been a guest lecturer several times, and I've very quickly realized that I'm probably not school teacher material.
Very good. Yeah, I'm not going to let you get into any trouble explaining that one.
Thank
Um,
you. Well,
um, a big issue for a lot of parents, especially at the high school level, is drugs on school campus,
mhm.
especially interfering with restroom use for a lot of their students. Don't feel comfortable or safe going to the bathroom during the day. What do you feel that FCPS could potentially implement in order to curb the drug availability or usage on school grounds?
Well, most people say you have to get tough on students, and a no tolerance policy for hard drugs is fair. But it's kind of hard for our society to preach on one side and then do the exact opposite in the rest of society. All right. We have a lot of drugs in society. All right. They just happen to be legal ones. Alcohol is a drug and it's legal. Nicotine is a drug and it's legal. Marijuana is being legalized in many places. Um, we have to have a tough policy in terms of kids not bringing drugs to schools, but we also need to fairly educate our kids and in some ways be honest and say our society has been kind of lying to people for a lot of years about the evil marijuana, and we're finally saying, oh, well, it really wasn't. Um, we need to be honest and say, yeah, but there are other drugs that can kill you, that can hurt you, that will addict you, like nicotine. Um, and trust that our students can actually learn this. Um, I understand. I was a student, and there were kids smoking in the bathrooms. We never had hard drug use in my school that I know of. Um, but that was still illegal and unacceptable and in some ways winked at by society. And I think it's the mixed message that's going out there that's part of the problem that's kind of encouraging it.
Yeah, yeah, that is absolutely fair enough. The special education system as a whole for FCPS obviously has been under the microscope after the
Hmm.
DOJ.
Yeah.
And I would like to couple your answer to the question really with another thing that I've just learned recently in talking with an advocate for parents for dyslexic kids. I didn't realize that FCPS doesn't really implement a not rigorous diagnostic for kids, but when kids are struggling, dyslexia doesn't seem to be kind of the top of mind thing that teachers look for and
Hmm.
are ready to assist with. Which was quite surprising to me since it's been around for so long. And I do know
Hmm.
years ago FCPS had implemented kind of a department for dyslexia, but really it falls under special education and making
Hmm.
sure that families whose children require an IEP or the 504 have what they need. What are your thoughts about the current state of special education and with FCPS, and how do you feel like we're going to be able to work our way through this?
Well, my stepson, graduated from FCPS. He had an IEP, and we as a family, but especially he, struggled because it took us a tremendously long time just to get him a diagnosis. And he didn't really start to get the help he needed until we spent a lot of time and a lot of money getting him an appropriate diagnosis. And then he could get the kind of education tailored to him that he needed. And even then, it was very difficult because there weren't enough special ed teachers. And so the amount of time that he had with that teacher was not nearly enough as what he needed. So, yeah, we need more special ed teachers. We need more qualified special ed teachers, but there's also the issue that a special ed teacher is not a diagnostician. A regular, kindergarten or uh, primary school teacher is also not a diagnostician. They're experts in education and they spot problems, but they're not necessarily the ones who are capable of identifying all of them. And um, part of the problem that we have is we're trying to put too much on the teachers and too much on the school system to compensate for the fact that the US doesn't have a very good healthcare system. Um, we have a very good for profit health insurance system, but a lot of the time it doesn't actually provide the care or the diagnosis. Um, we had to bring our son to Kennedy Krieger from Frederick to Kennedy Krieger in Baltimore after seeing two different therapists in Frederick just to get an appropriate diagnosis. And if a neurodevelopmental specialist was needed for him, uh, how would we expect a school teacher or a special ed teacher to pick up on all of that? Okay, your question was focused on dyslexia, and I understand that teachers can be taught more to identify that, but that depends a lot on an instructor getting to know the student. Okay, and understand the student and see their problems on an individual basis. And that can only happen when the educator has one on one time. And there are a lot of schools where the teacher has practically zero one on one time or a couple of minutes per student per day, if you average it out. That's barely enough time to check over their work and learn their name and uh, uh, figure out the more common issues, never mind trying to diagnose a more complicated situation. That said, there are things that a school system can do once a problem is identified. I was reading a book recently about learning how to read from a neuroscientist named Marianne Wolf, who was looking at the way the brain works when reading a book versus reading digital, tablet, phone, what have you. And our brains absorb information very differently between the two. Um, they focus better, our brains focus better reading a book than they do reading a tablet, which may have pictures and sounds and everything, which is amusing and interesting for entertainment purposes, but very distracting for reading purposes. But on the other hand, what I found fascinating was that the reading on a tablet actually helped kids who were dyslexic much more than their attempts to read the same material in a book, because the repetition rate was higher in the tablet. They could look at it more, they could see it and make the connection better with a digital format than a book format. And that's the opposite of somebody who doesn't have dyslexia. And so
Yeah.
there are ways that a kid can be taught once the problem has been identified.
Yeah.
Um, but like I said, the big issue is who's going to identify it and how
Right.
much time are they going to have to do it?
Yep. Yep. That's all good points. Um, uh, Several parents talked about the disruption of class with cell phones in schools. This is now probably an issue, even getting probably to elementary school at
Oh,
this
yeah.
point, but certainly at the middle and high school level. What are
Hmm.
your thoughts about cell phone use and how teachers can better get a handle on their classrooms?
Well, unless you want to search every student every morning to see if they have a cell phone on them, it's going to have to be up to the parents to say if they don't want the kid to be distracted by a cell phone in class, then don't give them a cell phone in the morning when they walk out the door, which they're not going to want to do. Uh, so, are you expecting the teacher to police it every single time? It's hard. In some cases, I mean, in some classrooms, sure, the honor system works. Um, But in other cases, the kid's going to sneak a look at it. They're going to play a game instead of reading. And uh, let's face it, is it the teacher that's at fault for that? Or is it the parent that gave the kid the cell phone and let them use it 24 hours a day? Um, why are we blaming the teacher and the school system for something that started at home?
Okay, interesting, interesting. Um,
I don't know that you're agreeing with me on very much of this, but
well, it's
I'm
okay.
giving you my perspective.
I don't
My
have to agree. I don't have to
Okay,
agree. It's all
that's
good.
fair.
It's all good. Um, Parents are wondering whether part of the curriculum could be utilized to help kids with kind of basic life skills. I think we were taught them back when we went to school,
Hmm.
but now those things have been removed from school. Balancing a checkbook, how to cook food, just your kind of basic everyday skills. What is your stance on the role of the education system to do that?
Well, actually, some schools do that. My wife was a teacher in Frederick County Public Schools, but she was at Monocacy Valley Montessori Public Charter School. And she incorporated those kind of lessons of life skills into her class daily. Okay. So a kid could be taught fractions using a recipe. Okay. And they would actually do the recipe as part of their day. It wouldn't be every day, once a week maybe. Um, Other kids were perhaps taught math I distinctly remember her telling me one child was mad about baseball, and she got him to do math by talking to him about baseball statistics, and he loved it and he learned it. So there are ways, and I think it is very appropriate for our school system to teach kids life skills. But it's hard to do that when the teachers are mandatorily required to teach certain things in certain ways so that the kids can pass standardized tests.
Yeah.
Um, sure, they can learn many different ways, but if a teacher has to take 3, 4, whatever weeks out of the year to interrupt all their lessons and teach to the standardized test, it breaks things up. But yeah, I completely agree. Life skills are 100% necessary. I have talked to people of my son's generation. He's in his twenties now in college, who do not know how to balance a checkbook, do not know how to figure out whether they're going to have enough money at the end of the month uh, uh, by doing a basic budget. It is absolutely necessary, um, and I think our society has undervalued it because it's profitable for people to be unable to figure these things out. Um,
Yeah. I would agree there for sure. I would agree. Um, all right. I think, let me just see the last question I had, and it just went out of my head. Let me just see here.
Notes are good.
Yeah. Maintenance, breaking. Oh, yep. No, I think we covered. I think we covered it. I think we did. Um, what What are your thoughts on the? Well, knowing that your wife taught at the charter school. Oh, and I remember my other question. The charter school here in Frederick. I think we have what, two or three?
I can think of three off the top of my head. I'm not sure if there's a fourth, but anyway,
Yeah, yeah.
go ahead.
So what are your thoughts on that? I don't know. They obviously fall under the umbrella of FCPS, kind of quasi. I don't know. Your thoughts on the people's choice of where they're able to send their child to school based on the needs of their family. What are your thoughts on all of that?
Well, I like having some choices in the school system. I am definitely in favor of public charter schools where they can experiment and do different styles of teaching. I think the rest of the school system is actually starting to move a little bit toward more of the Montessori hands-on method, at least at the earlier grades, and I think that's very valuable. Um, but there has to be a balance and accountability. Um, Now, charter schools have been denigrated recently because the the the, the standardized tests, they don't look as good with those, but the way that the education happens in the charter schools is a bit different, and so the kids' development is a bit different, and development is never in a straight line. And I think the standardized tests assume that kids are going to develop in an even straight line, and that's not true for human beings.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit far afield from your question. Um, I believe in public charter schools. I am fine with there being private schools. Not so fine with using vouchers for private schools, and that's because it seems to me that the private schools lack accountability that the public schools have. Um, and oh, one more thing about the public charter schools. I don't know if most people know this, but the entire budget of public charter schools comes out of the per pupil allocation. They don't get support for their buildings, so they've got to take the money out of the per pupil amount. They don't get any transportation, so the only people that can go to those schools are the ones who can afford to bring their kids personally to their schools and then pick them up at the end of the day. There's no public buses for that. So if we really want to compare how charter schools and public schools work, then we need to put them on the same level playing field. But that would take money, and the school system's not doing it.
Right, right. Okay, well, I think
Oh,
that covered
did,
the main questions
did
that
did
I.
I answer your last question adequately? I feel
I
like I
believe
kind
you
of
did.
jumped around.
Yeah, it's okay. It's all good.
Okay,
I can
all
kind of
right.
follow where you were going. It's very good. Very good. Um, so at this point, I would love to give you the floor, so to speak, and allow you to talk to the prospective voter and let them know or ask them for your vote.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, for people that haven't taken a look at my website, which is jerryalexandratos.com, my background is that I've been a resident of Frederick County for over 30 years, and I've been a research scientist in Frederick County that entire time. So I highly value reading, I highly value education. I very much respect teachers. I have to say that. My wife is downstairs. um, and I think it's also important to mention that in addition to that, I've been on two nonprofit boards. So I have had considerable experience in working with people, in negotiating, compromising, um, compromising on policy, compromising on budgets, not on principles. And that experience is what I'm going to bring to the Board of Education if I'm voted in. And if I'm not, well, they'll still hear from me, whether they want it or not. So I hope people vote for me. Thank you.
That's great. That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time. We wish you the best of luck on the 14th, and I'm sure either way we'll be hearing from you, keeping everybody straight. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Danny. I appreciate it. Good night.